So last time I made a video where I would give one buff to every brawler while trying to make them broken with that same buff, and let's just say that the video worked very well, and a lot of you actually wanted just the pure opposite of that video. Well, guess we're having a sequel. So today I'll be trying to make every single brawler as horrible as possible with only one nerf, with the additional challenge of trying to make the nerf as tiny or as insignificant as possible. Hope you enjoy the video, and let's start with Shelly. And Shelly be one of the few brawlers from this list that will just get literally the opposite of the change that I asked to make her broken. So I would ask for her movement speed to be reduced from fast to normal. If you remember the old days back when Shelly used to have a normal movement speed, back then she used to have 200 additional HP, her first star power lasted for 2.5 extra seconds, and her super recharge rate was way much better. So now think that even with all of those extras she was considered an F tier character, and you're starting to understand how bad she would be with such nerf. Next on the list we have Nita, and for Nita I want the bruised HP to be reduced from 8,400 to 7,200. This would mean that her literal bear would have the same HP as Juju's doll. That's honestly kinda ridiculous to think about it, but yes, it would be that severe DHP nerf. And honestly, DHP is just so important for the bear that without it, the bear would practically be useless. Use more the bear has a little bit of a semi-tank kinda, or has a very high burst amount of damage with the first gadget, and that's really about it. Not to mention that this would also be an indirect nerf to the hypercharge, so keep that in mind. So this nerf would kill Nita for sure. Next on the list we have Colt, and I would increase his reload time by 0.3 seconds, so from 1.4 seconds to 1.7 seconds. So in case you don't know, long time ago, really long time ago, before hypercharge were even a thing, Colt had a reload speed buff, which temporarily made him very good. Obviously he got power crept after a while, but for the time being that helped him a lot. So considering Colt's position right now, with that buff still at 100%, I am pretty sure that removing that buff entirely would kill Colt for sure. Next on the list we have Bull, and even though I don't think that he would even need a nerf to be considered horrible, it would just ruin the purpose of the video, so for the sake of this video I would just reduce his damage from 880 to 800. This means that his maximum damage, instead of being 4,400, would only be 4,000, reducing his DPS or his insane burst damage at extremely short range to not really that great anymore. That's literally the only semi-decent thing that Bull has, and now he would lose it, making Bull even worse than what he already is. Next on the list we have Brock, and for Brock I would reduce the explosion radius at the end of his projectile from 1.5 tiles to only 1 tile. Now in case you don't know, a long time ago Brock had the buff of the increased explosion radius, and to compensate such buff he needed a 17%-ish projectile speed nerf, a damage nerf, and a gadget nerf to compensate all of that. Now imagine removing the one buff that required so many compensation nerfs. Yeah, this would kill Brock for sure. Next on the list we have El Primo, and his super cost would be increased from 12 hits to 16 hits. Long time ago, back when the tank trait was even added to the game, El Primo became the most insane broken thing ever. It was absolutely nonsense. So they nerfed his super cost from 9 hits to 16 hits, and that made El Primo useless. So then they went for the middle term, and now because we're trying to kill him, we would go back to 16 hits. History approved. Next we have Barley, and his super cost would be increased from 6 ticks to 8 ticks, so now it would take a lot longer to get the super. This would obviously nerf the only thing that Barley is really used for, area control. That's all his kit is truly about, and honestly he can cycle some supers quite well, so removing that would kill Barley really. Not to mention that this would also be a nerf to the hypercharge itself, so I am very confident that this nerf would kill Barley. Next we have Poco, and his damage would be reduced from 1520 to 1400. Long time ago as well. His damage got increased, and then Supers understood that they overdid his damage, so they toned it down kinda to the middle term. So now we would bring it back down to absolutely garbage damage. Next on the list we have Rosa, and her shield power would be reduced from 70% shield to only 50%. So the shield would become like very weak. This is not technically a 20% nerf, this is more like a 30% nerf, because that's how percentages work, and I am sure that this would make Rosa's shield absolutely useless. Next we have Jessie, and honestly if it was not for the hypercharge, I am damn sure that Jessie would be like a D tier brawler at best. So now, the hypercharge turret bonus HP would be drastically reduced from an additional 50% to an additional 20%. So the turret would now deal the same bonus damage as it would have bonus HP. And this would be a massive nerf to the turret HP, I am telling you. For Dynamike, I would just simply increase his basic attack explosion delay from 1 second to 1.1 seconds. Now, I am sure that a lot of you are confused what this means. In case you don't know, the time that your dynamites take to explode, it's always the same, no matter how far away you throw them. That's why it seems like they take longer to explode when you throw them right up to your feet. And back then, it used to be 1.1 seconds, and Dynamike just simply was unplayable. I am surprised that 0.1 seconds made that big of a difference, but it did, so I am sure it would do it again. Next we have Tick, and if I am correct, back when he was released, his super used to cost 9 hits instead of 6. So reducing that back to what it used to be, I'm sure it would kill Tick, because not only be a nerf to the super, but also to the hypercharge. And this would be a very severe nerf to Tick, honestly. Next on the list we have 8-bit, and I have a brilliant idea for this one. What if we made 8-bit even slower, making his weakness even stronger? So his movement speed would be reduced from very slow to very slow. This would make Tick absolutely just unplayable. Next on the list we have Rico, and this will be a very harsh nerf, but he deserves it. His super would no longer pierce through enemies. So you would just be so much harder to cycle through supers, because you would just simply not be able to hit more than one enemy with your super. So I am sure that this nerf would drastically nerf Rico. Next on the list we have Darrly, and now you would have to charge both of your supers individually. This means that instead of charging your super and getting 2, this means that you would now have to charge 2 supers. Now, this would probably not make that big of a difference if Darrly didn't receive the charge rate nerf that he received just a few weeks after his rework. So because of this, I am sure that this nerf would kill Darrly. Next on the list we have Penny, and her turret's range would be decreased from 13.33 tiles to only 9.66. This means that characters like Piper, Belle, Byron would be able to hit the cannon in 100% safety at the pure end of their range of the main attack. So this would just remove a lot of the versatility that a cannon has, and very potentially make Penny horrible. Next on the list we have Carl, and his range would be reduced from 8.33 tiles to 7.67. So one of the three things that you should never mess up in Carl, it's range, projectile speed, or damage. And reverting the range even so slightly would absolutely kill Carl. Next on the list we have Jacky, and this is a very simple one. Now you must stand still while using your super. This would completely ruin any sort of aggressive skill that Jacky might have had by using the super and dealing damage while people were getting pulled to the center. So this would absolutely destroy Jacky. She had a whole rework just to bring this to the game, and just reverting it back to what it used to be with zero compensation buffs would absolutely kill Jacky. Next on the list we have Gus, and his projectile width would be reduced from 1 tile to 0.66 tiles. So his projectile width would be around the same as characters like Piper, Byron or Belle. So now he would be a lot more fair against most of the snipers. Not to mention that because of how projectile width in general works, these would also be a very tiny range nerf. But hey, a nerf is a nerf, and his nerf would make Gus really bad for sure. Next on the list we have Bo, and his mine's explosion delay would be increased from 1.15 seconds to 1.3 seconds. So essentially, the mines will take 10% longer to explode. This would mean that nearly all of the characters, as long as they weren't considered slow characters, would just be able to run outside the mine's radius before they even exploded. So this nerf would absolutely kill Bo. For Ems, it's a very simple one. Her super cost would be increased from 9 hits to 12 hits. So now you would no longer be able to get the super with only 3 ammo. Although it was somewhat unrealistic, it used to be possible. And now with this nerf, it would no longer be possible. Not to mention that Ems is no longer as good as she used to be in the past, so it requires a less harsh nerf to make her absolutely horrible. For Stu, his super cost would be increased from 1 projectile to 2 projectiles. I don't need to explain myself why this would be one of the biggest nerfs in history. His super always consistently only costed 1 projectile. Yes, you would still get a super in 1 ammo, but 1 projectile, it's just something that this is 100% nerf. This would kill Stu for sure. Next on the list we have Piper, and her maximum range damage would be reduced from 3400 to 3040. For you to understand, this was the damage that she used to have before she received that massive damage nerf that she received a very long time ago. And I would bring this with 0 compensation buffs, so she would essentially become useless after this. The thing that required numerous nerfs to make her finally balanced would just be taken away. So yes, this would make Piper absolutely horrible. Next on the list we have Pam, and let's just reduce her damage even further, from 520 to 480. She already deals like nearly 0 damage, so this damage nerf would make her absolutely unplayable. For Frank, it's very simple. Remove his rework entirely, so he'll be back to his base form pretty much, and he would instantly go back to the F tier. He needed like what, 9 compensation nerfs, and he's still considered a very strong brawler. So yeah, I'm sure that this nerf would make Frank absolutely unplayable. Next we have Bibi, and her attack delay would be increased from 0.6 seconds to 0.8. So now it would be a lot harder to just burst down enemies, because now you just attack slower. Like, it would be lucky if you won like almost any 1v1, because 0.8 seconds on a fast-paced game like Brawl Stars, that is a really long delay. For B, it would be simple. Her reload time would be increased from 0.9 seconds to 1.2 seconds. So essentially it would be awful, because with only 1 ammo, taking extremely longer to get that one and only ammo, it would make B extremely bad. Next we have Nani, and her damage would be reduced from 1480 per orb to 1400. This was actually the buff that made her very good. Then they had to tone it down to the middle term, and now we're putting it back to how awful it used to be a while ago with 0 compensation buffs. This is making Brawl absolutely horrible certified. Next we have Edgar, and this is a very simple one. Reduce his HP from 6600 to only 6000. Making Edgar a lot more squishier will just make Edgar a lot easier to kill, and he won't be able to heal himself that easily because he does not have that much HP to heal in the first place, so he would be awful. Next we have Griff, and same thing. His HP would be reduced from 6800 to only 6000. One thing that Griff needs due to his slow projectile speed, it is to get very close to the enemies. So if he had way much less HP, it would be nearly impossible to approach any enemy either with your basic attack or with your super. This would make Griff horrible. Next on the list we have Grom, and funny idea, what if we reduce his projectile speed even more to make his projectile even easier to dodge? This would just absolutely ruin Grom. He would be just unplayable after this. Next on the list we have Bonnie, and let's just now give her the 8-bit movement speed. Since 8-bit is getting slower, it only makes sense for me that Bonnie on the cannon form also gets slower. So now the cannon form gets its movement speed reduced from slow to very slow, making things balanced. Next we have Gale's super, and this would be an interesting one. His super would no longer pass through walls. Like, I thought about this a long time ago, back when Gale was broken to just do this, and back then I thought that this would just simply fix Gale, but now considering his state, giving at this moment this nerf, it would just kill Gale for sure. Next on this we have Collete, and her minimum damage from her basic attack would be reduced from 1000 to 600. So now at bare minimum you would do 600 damage. If I remember correctly, back when she was released she only used to do like 350 at minimum damage. So this would kill Collete for sure. Next on the list we have Belle, and her reload time would be increased from 1.4 seconds to 1.7 seconds. Now, Belle no longer does anything really that well anymore. She has good HP, good damage, a little bit of area control, a little bit of tank countering with the super, so reducing all of that with a simple massive reload speed nerf, I am sure that this would make Belle practically unplayable really. Next on the list we have Ash, and honestly it took me a long time to figure this one out, but I have the perfect idea. The speed that you get for each level would be reduced by 50%. This means that when you get level 1 Rage, instead of being fast, it would be almost fast. And when you were at full Rage, whether as before you would be very fast, now you would only be regular fast. These would just make for Ash nearly impossible to approach anyone. Even at max rage, it would be a very hard task, so these would practically kill Ash really. Next on the list we have Lola, and just make so that while the ego is right next to you, he would deal 0 damage. That's simple. Because everyone plays ego on top of themselves, now it would just literally be impossible to do that because the ego would not deal any damage. This would kill Lola for sure. Next on the list we have Sam, and the heal from his first star power would be reduced from 20% to 15%. Everyone uses the first star power. Everyone with at least one brain cell. So reducing the heal by 25% would just make Sam absolutely unplayable. Next we have Mandy, and the time that it takes for you to focus your attack would be increased from 0.45 seconds to 0.75. In case you don't know, right before she was released, when she was still considered a bad brawler, she actually even received this emergency buff, and even with that she wasn't considered good. And this was a really important buff, so just removing that would make Mandy unplayable. Next on the list we have Maisie, and just simply revert all of the damage buffs that she received, from 3000 to 2600. Honestly, dealing 3k damage is insane, but dealing 2.6k damage with that basic attack, it's kinda weak. So yeah, reverting the nerf seems the perfect choice really to make Maisie absolutely garbage. Next on the list we have Fang, and now the super heal would be changed from healing missing HP to healing current HP. What a troll. Instead of healing more if you have less HP, you would actually heal more if you had more HP. So if you only had like 1k HP, you would only heal 500 HP, but if you had 11,000 HP, you would heal 5,000 HP and a half. This would honestly be kinda funny and so weird. You know what else is so weird? The fact that you might not be subscribed to the channel. How dare you? We are so close to hit 4,000 subscribers. This was honestly insanely fast, and I am so thankful for the support that all of you have been showing. It's amazing, and I am sure that we can reach 4k subscribers by the end of February at least, so I am counting on you. And while you're doing that, watch more content on the channel and join our Discord server. So thank you so much, and let's go to the next brawler. Next on the list we have Pearl, and now it would take an additional 4 seconds to charge your hit bar. So it would take an additional 33% of the time to charge the hit bar. And these would make Pearl really bad because, I mean, the hit bar is everything she has, so this would make her unplayable. Next on the list we have Larry and Lawrie, and his second explosion would swap place with the first explosion. So essentially, the first explosion is larger, but the second one is smaller. Even though this would make hitting the first shot easier, the second shot would be nearly impossible to land, therefore brutally reducing your damage. And I am sure that this nerf would kill Larry and Lawrie. Next on the list we have Angelo, and the charge time of the arrow would be increased from 2.5 seconds to 3.5 seconds. So you would have to wait 3.5 seconds to fully charge your arrow. So this essentially means that if you ever fully charge your arrow against an enemy in a 1v1, he would always get, if I am correct, at least 2 healing ticks before we even manage to land the shot. And this would be a devastating nerf for Angelo. Next on the list we have Barry, and this is a very simple one. Completely remove the heal trait. If no other support has it in the game, why would Barry have it? This would simply absolutely kill Barry, and I am sure of it. Next on the list we have Shade, and your super duration would be cut in half. So instead of having 6 seconds of super, you would only have 3 seconds. This would make your super practically useless, and it would be impossible to stack any movement speed. This massive nerf with 0 compensation buffs would for sure make Shade absolutely garbage. Next on the list we have Meeple, the newest brawler, and simply increase his reload time from 2 seconds to 2.3 seconds. This was part of the emergency buff that he had received, and I just imagine that if he never received such emergency buff, he would have been absolute garbage. Next on the list we have Mortis, and just essentially remove one very specific interaction. Now the super recharge rate would be reduced, such as now whenever you land the super onto 2 enemies, you would now instead need 3 attacks instead of the previous 2. This would make cycling supers against like 2 enemies a lot harder, and even though it's a very technical and just really nerfing one interaction, I am damn sure that such a nerf would make Mortis way much worse. Next on the list we have Tara, and the super projectile speed would be reduced from 1522 to 1250. Essentially, it would now be a lot easier to dodge the super, especially if you throw the super at maximum range. Next on the list we have Jean, and your super no longer breaks walls. This essentially means that if you collect an enemy, your hand will not pass to the other side of the wall. So you actually not only would not be able to break walls, as you would also be impossible to pull enemies if they were on the other side of a wall. And I don't need to explain myself why would this absolutely kill Jean. Next on the list we have Max, and her ammo amount would be reduced from 4 ammo to only 3. These would just be a massive nerf. Now you just couldn't store as many ammo, and Max is good at bursting down enemies because she has more ammo than every other enemy in the game except for a Brock with the second sword power. And the 4 ammo advantage, it's massive, and most likely a lot of you are underestimating the power of such nerf. Mr. P sucks right now, so The only nerf that would really do is that now the porter spawn delay would be increased from 0 seconds to 5 seconds. So now immediately when you place your turret, it would not spawn any porter. So if you try to use your super defensively, it would be really worse, because enemies would just instantaneously destroy the base, or nearly instantaneously, because that thing does have quite a bit of HP, but not having the porter instantaneously would be a massive nerf to Mr. P. Next on the list we have Sprout, and this was a tricky one, because one single nerf didn't seem enough to just destroy Sprout, but I think I came out with a decent idea. So the duration of your super would be reduced from 10 seconds to only 6 seconds. So your defensive skills with the super would be drastically nerfed, not to mention that this also impacts the hypercharge, which was already really bad. So I am pretty confident that this nerf would absolutely destroy Sprout. Next on the list we have Byron, and your reload time would be increased from 1.45 seconds to 1.7 seconds. Back in the very old days when Byron was absolutely horrible, he had 1.6 seconds of reload time. So imagine how bad he would be with 1.7 of reload time. It would absolutely make Byron trash. Next on the list we have Squeak, and now your super will take an additional second to explode after landing on the floor. In case you don't know, this was how Squeak was originally released, and that sucks. The super was the single easiest thing to dodge in the game, and bringing that back would be extremely bad, because the super, it is a very good way for Squeak to deal a good amount of damage in a very short controlled area. So nerfing the super to make it nearly unusable, which would also affect the hypercharge, would make Squeak really awful. Next we have Lou, and just simply make your super no longer dealing damage. Very simple. So now people would actually be able to heal while inside your super, which might be hard to believe, but this was actually how his super got released, and it was horrible. So I am pretty sure that this nerf would very easily kill. Next we have Ruffs, and even though most people don't play him, he is fairly decent. So his reload time would be increased from 1.4 seconds to 1.8 seconds. A 0.4 second increase on your reload time. It killed Mo, it would kill Ruffs for sure. Next on the list we have Buzz, and now your unload time of the attack would be increased from from 0.9 seconds to 1.2 seconds. So now you would take a lot longer to unload your ammo and to deal the damage, and this would be very bad if you wanted to cycle supers, or if you just wanted to shred through enemies in general. This would make Buzz a lot worse. Next on the list we have Fang, and reduce the recharge rate of the super from 25% to 20%. This is how Fang was originally released, and this pretty much meant that even if you landed one kick or one shoe before using the super onto an entire enemy team, you would no longer get the super back, and would essentially be extremely hard to truly cycle your super. Not to mention that this would be a massive nerf to the hypercharge as well, making the hypercharge even harder to get. Next we have Eve, and very simply reduce the damage by 7.5%. She has 3 different damages, so there is 1 damage for each individual egg, but reducing the damage would make her a horrible sniper, and the pets don't really do that much unless you have the hypercharge, so I am pretty confident that this nerf would absolutely destroy Eve. Next on the list we have Otis, and your super duration would be reduced from 3 seconds to only 2 seconds. So now you would silence for a way much shorter duration. It would still be good, especially at close range, but at long range your super would become pretty useless, and Otis is not really that big of a deal, so this nerf would most likely be enough to kill him. Next on the list we have Buster, and now your shield would have a 6000 HP meter. So if the enemies dealt more than 6 damage to the shield would immediately be interrupted. So this would essentially destroy the whole purpose of your super, and I am damn sure that this would absolutely kill Buster. Next on the list we have Gray, and your first gadget just simply no longer goes through walls. It's time to stop this nonsense of this guy being just so in need for his gadgets in order to be viable. It's kinda weird, honestly. He is so reliant on that gadget, and nerfing the gadget to this, I am sure that this would be enough to kill Gray. Next on the list we have RT, and now when you split, the enemy no longer receives damage from both your top part and your lower part. They instead will receive damage from the part that deals the highest damage, which means that if you split on top of yourself, it would be the top part that would deal the most damage, the part where you have control. This would essentially pretty much destroy one of the major things that RT has. I mean, the only thing left would be some weirdo gene strategies, but let's be realistic, that's not enough to keep this guy alive. He would be pretty much dead, especially on ladder after this nerf. Next on the list we have Willow, and your basic attack will now have a 1 second delay. In case you don't know, back when Willow was first presented to us, she actually received 2 emergency buffs, and this was one of them. So essentially, you would connect the shot, but the enemy would actually not receive any impact damage. Instead, they would just get the poison for slightly longer, but still receive the damage 1 tick later. It would not reduce the damage, it would just make them receive the damage later, and essentially this just destroyed any sense of aggressiveness that Willow had. So this would for sure kill Willow. Next we have Doug, and your super revive HP will be reduced from 100% to 50%. Doug already sucks. This nerf would just be overkill, honestly. Next we have Chuck, and the shield from your super would be removed. So essentially it would be extremely easy to just kill you while you are at the super. Heist would no longer be a salvation because you could just get one shot by literally most of the stuff. The shield is extremely important, and if you play Chuck, you just know that. So I am damn sure that this nerf would absolutely kill Chuck. Next on the list we have Charlie, and the cocoon HP would be drastically reduced from 8,400 to 5,080. This would make destroying the egg incredibly easy. It would not even be really wasting ammo, it would actually be conserving ammo considering how easy it would just be to destroy the egg. The only thing that she really has in her favor would just be removed, just like that. Next we have the monkey, and his HP would be reduced from 6,600 to only 6,000. Mico absolutely sucks, and he still does, so just this tiniest HP nerf would already be enough to absolutely kill him. Next on we have Melody, and her floating notes damage would be cut in half. So essentially, the damage that you deal to high safest to tanks would just be completely reduced to oblivion. For sure, this nerf would kill Melody. Next on this we have Lily, and her gadget would now cost you your super. So this essentially means that you would have to sacrifice your super in order to go to the Shadow Realm. And I am damn sure that even though the gadget is very strong, that's a sacrifice that most people would not want to do. Probably so bad to the point where the second gadget would potentially be the better one after such nerf. And we all know how important the gadget it is to Lily. Next on the list we have Clancy, and the amount of projectiles that exists on your super would be reduced from 16 projectiles to only 12. These will make your super a lot worse in area control and in damage overall, especially against tanks for example. And especially before level 3 where your super does not have any bonus damage. So I am damn sure that this nerf would absolutely kill Clancy. Next on us we have Mo, and even though Mo is kinda dead right now already, he's not entirely useless. So let's fix that. Your super no longer deals any knockback. The only thing that he has left, which was the super, also got removed from him. How crazy and how bad would that make Mo? Next on the list we have Juju, and her pet's HP would be drastically nerfed from 7,200 to 5,400. Juju has just so many good things that I seriously don't think that just one nerf would ever be enough, unless it was just something ridiculous like reducing her HP to 3,000 or something. But this is probably the best we will ever get, because that doll, it's honestly crazy tanky. Next on the list we have Spike and just simply revert all of his HP buffs. So his HP would be reduced from 5600 to 4800. And Spike would go back to being absolute garbage. Next we have Crow and his poison duration would be reduced from 4 seconds to 3 seconds. These would just destroy him. Less charge rate and less control, and it would be harder for both the gadget and the star power. These would kill Crow for sure. Next we have Leon, and this is another one very simple. Weirdly enough, legendaries are being the easiest ones to nerf, not gonna lie. Your super duration would be reduced from 6 seconds to only 4 seconds. So you would get nearly 0 time to go invisible, and I am damn sure that this would be more than enough to absolutely make Leon garbage. Next we have Sandy, and her super duration would also be reduced from 9 seconds to 6 seconds. The area control will be reduced by 33%. Not to mention that this would also make it extremely hard to cycle supers because the supers last less overall. So this nerf would absolutely destroy Sandy. Next on the list we have Amber, and her damage would be reduced from 420 per flame to 380. Back when Amber was considered mid, she had 400 damage. So that means that in order to make her garbage, her damage would need to be even lower than that. So I am very sure that this nerf would absolutely kill Amber. Next on the list we have Meg, and the mecha amount of ammo would be reduced from 3 to 2. Why, you may ask? Why not? And I'm just sure that this nerf would absolutely destroy Meg, because the robot does really need those 3 ammo to burst down enemies, so this nerf would for sure kill Meg. Next on the list we have Surge, and your super cost would be increased from 3 hits to 4 hits. These would make it unbearable to stay at level 1, because now it would take longer to reach level 2 because you need 1 extra shot. Just increasing levels in general would be a lot harder, cycling supers would be extremely hard, and this also nerfs the hypercharge. So I am extremely confident that this single nerf would make Surge go from the S tier all the way down to the F tier. Next on the list we have Chester, and his damage would be reduced from 1280 to only 1200. Chester is already kinda mid, and the only thing that he has got left is his massive damage. So I am sure that this nerf would absolutely make Chester unplayable. Next on the list we have Cordelius, and now enemies can use their super while they are in the Shadow Realm. Attention, I am only talking about the super, you still cannot activate hypercharges or gadgets. But this would have a bigger impact than you think, because enemies can use supers while inside the Shadow Realm, this means that your Shadow Realm could not interrupt supers. So if a Frank was unloading a super and you hit him with the super, he would still deploy the super just in the Shadow Realm. Which this nerf, it would absolutely destroy Cordelius. Next on the list we have Kit, and his heal would be changed from 10% of the allies' HP, and yours as well, to only 540 heal per second. This would make Kit with tanks garbage, because you would not be able to heal like 1000 HP per second, it would only be 500, 400 for all allies. This would be a tiny buff to healing allies like Tick for example, but the disadvantages are just way much worse than the advantages. So I am dead sure that this nerf would absolutely kill Kit. Next on the list we have Draco, and your super unload time would be increased from half a second to a whole second. This would make cycling supers harder, because it would also be more vulnerable during those super cycles, not to mention that it would be easier to interrupt those same supers. Because you pull out so many supers in a match, this nerf would impact your entire gameplay drastically, not to mention that it would take longer to heal and regain ammo. So I am pretty confident that this nerf would pretty much kill Draco. And finally we have Kenji, and his heal trait would be removed. That simple. I am sure that a long time ago this would have already been enough to make Kenji unplayable, so I am even more confident that this nerf right now would make Kenji even further unplayable. So I am sure that this nerf would absolutely kill Kenji. And there you have it. One nerf for all of the brawlers in the game, making them trash. Are you mad that it did not include Buzz Lightyear? Well, he's gone in a couple weeks, so I am sure that no one will miss him. With this being said, hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see ya on the next video.